Говорили про те, що кожен українець може зробити для того, щоб зберегти енергію. І ми пережили зиму. Ми сьогодні говоримо про те ж саме, але більш детально з точки зору механізму, як це зробити фінансово. Якщо ми говоримо про теплозбереження будинків, тобто утеплення будинків і не часткове за ініціативою окремих мешканців, а, скажімо так, тотальне утеплення всього будинку. Ви знаєте, що експерти говорять, і це підтверджують і саме життя, що якщо ми частково утеплюємо будинки, у нас через певний час порушується конструктив будинка, і у нас вже буде питання через 10-15 років, що у нас будинки будуть в аварійному стані, саме тому, що хтось вирішив його утеплити самостійно тільки для себе. Тому говоримо сьогодні про модель фінансування таких проєктів. Як це робити, що з цим робити, дізнаємося від таких спікерів. З нами, і ми дякуємо, сьогодні є Серgiy Kushnir від Мінрегіонбуду. Він є керівник департаменту систем життєзабезпечення та житлової політики міністерства. Gzegozh Gayda, керівник проєкту Міжнародної фінансової корпорації «Енергоефективність у житловому секторі України». Олена Дмитрiyeva, заступник голови правління UkrGasbanku. Ми очікували Яну Bugrimovу, радника віце-прем'єр-міністра. Вона зараз на засіданні в Кабінеті міністрів, тому не буде з нами. І традиційно я хочу передати слово для вступних тез від Центру досліджень енергетики, замдиректору Вадиму Глamazdinu. Будь ласка, Вадим.
Дякую, Діме. Доброго дня. Дійсно, ми, можна сказати, продовжуємо обговорювати те, що ми обговорювали на попередньому заході, саме з точки зору того, як це потрібно і як це можливо фінансувати. Чому це питання таке важливе? Саме з огляду на те, що, в принципі, Україна вже багато років, якщо не десятиріч, робить там, як настає якесь лихо, маленьке, там середнє, велике, як зараз, то Україна в пожежному порядку щось робить таке, щоб просто там загасити, саме зараз заштопати цю дірку. Але до чого це призводить, ми всі бачимо сьогодні на прикладі стану, насправді, тих же систем теплопостачання, тої ж енергосистеми країни. І напевно, що незважаючи на досить скрутний стан наразі, в нас вже нема можливості ще раз заштопати дірку, адже це може вже виявитися остання латка і все це розсипеться. Тому якщо вже щось робити, якщо вже нас життя примушує, то робити це треба вірно, правильно, так, щоб там завтра-післязавтра нам не довелося робити щось набагато більш велике і дороге, аби виправити помилки. Це саме стосується і утеплення помешкань. Якщо ми кажемо про утеплення багатоквартирних, багатоповерхових будинків, то тут є кілька проблем одразу. Перше, про що вже почав говорити Дмитро, що насправді не можна утеплювати поквартирно. Адже це, окрім того, що це втрачає половину свого сенсу, якщо утеплити тільки там одну-дві стіни, а не весь будинок, це дійсно дуже шкідливо впливає на стан самих стін. І зараз ми утеплимо там 10 квартир зі 100, а за 3 роки ми будемо зносити цей будинок і будувати новий, якщо в нас будуть кошти. До того ж, те утеплення, яке робиться зараз, воно, в принципі, дуже шкідливо для тих, хто всередині. Адже покласти пінопласт без там повітряного прошарку просто так на стіну, це майже гарантовано отримати всередині підвищену вологість та згодом.
It's not hygienically safe for the residents in these premises. That is, when you try to warm and to add layers to the facade and the walls or external walls of the building, you should do this correctly. And this brings us to the point that external warming of the multi-storied buildings should be made from at the central level. That's why today we have a set of programs both at the national level on behalf of the state, and there are programs offered by international donors which allow us to warm our houses and to increase energy efficiency in the country. On the one hand, on the other hand, we have reached the point in our gas supply market and in the utilities sphere when we may surely expect for not very warm heaters, centralized heaters in winter, because the gas should be saved. And for us now there is the issue how to remain in the comfort area for ourselves under conditions when the heating batteries in our houses will be underwarmed at the central level. And we will listen to our guests who will provide us with recommendations what we can do. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Sergiy Kushnir to hear what the state suggests to the residents and what can be done. I agree with you that today we have a tough situation with gas fuels, and the entire utilities system is not sufficiently energy efficient, and we need to think how to raise energy efficiency. Actually, we should confess that we do not have efficient mechanism working in the utilities sphere. Some people try to shift to individual electric heating to find some other solutions, but actually these are still untested ways. That's why at the state level we are thinking about effective mechanism which could raise energy efficiency of our houses. And here we are thinking about bank support and state support for those who carry out these measures on increasing energy efficiency of the houses. And also we're thinking about controlling mechanisms for spending allocated for these purposes, and for checking the quality of final products. Today, unfortunately, cannot suggest that we can resolve the lack of gas for residential heating via increase in energy efficiency of the houses. This would require longer period of time, even if we want to apply the international experience. The propaganda of this process would require 2 or 3 years. Then the necessary measures could be applied, and only after some half a dozen of years the first results could be obtained. That's why today we are thinking about alternative fuels where it is possible, about alternative production of energy and similar similar solutions. Thank you, Sergiy. And as for gas supplies, some time ago, we have heard that Poland reported that Russia cut down its gas supplies to Poland, and Poland consequently will cut down its reverse supplies to Ukraine. We will now describe the international experience about residential warming from IFC.
Projekt energoefektywnist.
Yeah, I represent international cooperation, but also before I came to Ukraine to work with that work, I wanted to understand the scale of the problem and consumption of gas. When I had that data, Ukraine used about 75 billion square meters of gas, 50 billion that was input from Russia, and 25 that was Ukrainian gas. We have to remember that in Ukraine there is also a very powerful source of energy, and there is hydro energy and nuclear energy, coal, and gas is only one of those. The Poland, my country, is consuming about 15 billion square meters, and 5 gets by itself, and 10 from Russia. Look at the numbers, compare. Ukraine 85 billion, Poland 15. Ukraine reduced the consumption of gas down to 50 billion cubic meters. But that reduction happened because of the reduction of the consumption in industrial and commercial sector. In housing sector and private sector, there was no reduction of the gas use, and the sector consumes about half of gas. So 25 cubic million, and Poland consumes less, 15 without nuclear energy and without hydro energy. You can understand the scale of the problem we are talking about. And now, I would like to say a couple of words of my private experience. What I see, what happened in an apartment where I lived when I was a child. There was a regular apartment in Warsaw, and I remember that it was always cold because we had windows of wood, and it was cold. And on the street, we remember when it was pipes with heat. There was no snow. And also we had four big heating stations, and they built one more. Then there were 90s. What I saw as a child or as a young man who lived in that apartment, at some point, it was impossible to get into one room in the cellar where we played with my friends. Something new was there. Once I looked in, and there was a modern some kind of device for heating something, and then I found out what that was. Later there was a process of insulation of that building, where still my parents live. They insulated windows, so they replaced windows and doors. Then I saw that I could not see that heat pipes, so snow was not melting there. Now, 2 old heating stations, they don't exist. There are some other facilities there. One heating station works all the time. The other one works when the temperature is minus 20. So it's like a reserve heating station or a reserve boiler, you can call it. So Warsaw is heated by one heating station. The other one, the fifth one, nobody knows where it is anymore. how to achieve that. So that happened as a child. How to achieve that? I could understand when I was became an adult and about process in our country which allowed to sharply reduce the consumption of energy. What I saw that those rusted pipes that were replaced with that device. That was individual heating device in the building, which measured the heating in the building. Secondly, what I saw, that was insulation. All insulation in Poland it was always over whole building. Just pay attention. At the beginning, they installed the device to measure and control, to monitor and control, and then only insulation, not in individual apartments, but whole buildings, insulation of whole buildings. And the third one, which what provoked those in 1993, tariffs for heat, gas, electric energy were higher than for industry. Why they did it? Just because industry is like a wholesale consumer, and population is retail. And then it's clear if you wholesale sale costs less, and all those individual consumers, they have to pay more. And that works since 1993 until now. So what I'm talking about, all investments that should be done into buildings, they should be done for a whole building. Why? Because a building as one unit consumes energy, not separate apartments. Heat is migrating between apartments. You will not be able to save heat in one apartment, because if there are losses in some other apartments, that heat is me that I save, it will run away to someone else. So it can be done only if you take the whole building into account. And the second point, honestly, I don't know why, but nobody's talking about such simple things, and why a foreigner should come and tell about that. Look how a regular heat supply happens in a regular city. The boiler produces heat, and that heat goes to a network. Then, without any control, when it is needed, so it goes into the grid according to the design of that grid. So they don't have measuring devices how much of that heat should come somewhere. A regular building, the amount of heat depends on the temperature outside, or do people open or close windows, whether they insulated their building or not, whether they want it to be hot or not in their apartment. Doesn't matter, because that amount of heat that comes to the building only comes from the design for that building. So there must be, there must be a device, a meter on every heat meter on every building for us to measure and then to save. We'll not save anything without that. So we can do something, but that amount of heat from the system will not change, and the number of gas you have to burn to produce that heat, it will not change also. So there will be no saving. Once again, I repeat, for us to succeed in saving heat in the private sector, we have to take a building like a whole, and then we have to control, measure heat, and that's a prime task for the country. Thank you very much. I understand that about financial model, how that can be done for a building. My colleague from UkrGasbank, Olena Dmitriyeva, the deputy board director. Good afternoon, colleagues. A year ago, thanks to international financial cooperation, UkrGasbank developed a special loan product which allowed to finance OSBB. If there is an OSBB in the building, they have the right to get a loan in a bank, and because of that, they can work on energy efficiency, installation and installment of boilers, meters. There is such an opportunity. We continue to provide loans, and the interest rate is very small, just 17%, I believe. But unfortunately, we don't see a big demand from OSBB. As I understand, at present in Ukraine, we have about 17,000 OSBB. Unfortunately, they are not interested in bank products. I think the main reason is a moral aspect. People are not ready to take loans for insulation. In Ukraine, there is an opinion that the state must create conditions under which people will feel warm in their apartments. And I believe everything will change after this winter. If we really have not enough of gas, next year there will be big changes. People will they will try to get loans, and they will think about how to insulate their houses. Unfortunately, there is also a trend that people, independently, they're trying to insulate their apartments. Now, when you look at multi-storied buildings, you see some little puzzles near some windows. People insulated their apartments. It's a very negative trend. We don't give loans for such projects. We believe that this is dangerous, and hope that there will be an understanding that brings it to destruction of buildings, and people will do it together in the framework of SBB and in some the framework of some other legal entities if they don't like SBB to do that. But it must be on the level of the state. We should inform our people that if they don't insulate, if they don't provide heat for themselves, nobody will provide that for them. One more moment. An interest rate, 70%, is it much or not? A little. We had many meetings, and we always say that people take loans for phones for 100%, and they believe it's normal. To take a loan with a 17% interest rate for their comfort, they believe it's a big interest rate. We have to educate. And one cold winter will be enough for people to understand that something should be changed in their understanding of processes. That's what I wanted to tell you. Thank you. Let me clarify it. How actively are people taking loans? Yes, there are some examples, but there is no big demand. We have about 10 applications. Is it in Kyiv or for Ukraine? In Kyiv, nobody from Kyiv. We sent a letter to Mayor Klitschko with a proposal to reduce the interest rate, and we don't have the answer, but we hope we get it. Also, I would like to mention that there is experience in Ukraine when local authorities reduce that interest rate. They did in Lutsk. They understand this problem, and these applications we have, that's from Lutsk, because the city council covers the interest rate. At the beginning of this year, as I understand, the Ministry of Regional Development, they developed a draft regulation. They planned to have it on the level of the state, the compensation for the interest rate. But as I understand, in the budget, they don't have money. That's why a systemic approach stopped. But there is a hope that local authorities can deal with this. They must care about the people. about their convenience. Of course, if there are some examples, so they can share them with other cities. Sergiy, the question is very serious. Those puzzles which we see on the buildings in 10-15 years that can bring to damage of buildings even sooner. Are there thoughts or approaches how to prohibit to do that in Ukraine? Because that can be we could have a big catastrophe. At present, if we speak about those measures that are taken, and there are some anti-crisis measures, and it's not for energy efficiency, but how to cut consumption. Kiev will feel it. There is no hot water in Kiev, and in the majority, in all the cities of Ukraine, they stopped providing hot water in the summer. Also, they postpone the heating season, the beginning. In many cities, they decided to change the schedule in schools and some other activities just to save, not to use efficiently. These are two different things, because to take measures, energy efficiency measures, and for which they had no documentation, there were no design, no feasibility study, and no source of financing. That is the reality. At the same time, those projects we had, they are realized, and replacement of gas to other fuel. Also, there was a regulation of the Cabinet of Ministers on compensation to heat producers who use alternative fuels. And the cost of that heat energy is higher than the cost of that which is produced of gas. That compensation, the state is ready to cover that for producers, for us to stimulate production of heat energy of alternative sources.
Дякую.
Thank you. And before I will open Q&A session, we will get a comment from Mr. Vadim, and the question. Look, besides other things, we witness rather strange situation. Our population absolutely do not understand why and what they should do. That is what Mr. Gzegozh mentioned. Actually, there is a primary project, a primary design of any residential house, and nobody is interested how much warm was designed for this house 40 years ago. And people actually got accustomed to a situation when anyway there will be sufficient warmth, and it will be sufficient only not to open windows, as we got accustomed. And people do not realize that there won't be enough warmth to feel comfortable in the house. The second, people believe that they will make the more warm walls, and feel comfortable. But people do not understand how dangerous is this policy when first these walls additionally warmed, they accumulate humidity, then the rifts appear, and in some 10 years the wall will be simply ruined. So the financing organizations should develop some programs aimed at raising public awareness. And now my question, whether we have such public awareness programs for broad public. Probably I will answer thinking about the national program for warming up multi-storied residential houses. We have started with the vision, what should be done, how it should be done, and what is the final objective of what should be done. And International Financial Corporation is involved in spreading this information, in communicating it to the public in order to raise public awareness why this should be done and why this is needed. It is quite easy to state that we do not have enough money. No, we cannot say that we do not have money. We have UkrGasbank program, which is ready to provide credits for condominiums, condominium around the country who are ready to warm their houses. Actually, the money is available, and why do people why people do not do this? What is the main reason? Now we say that the state supports people and encourages them to encourages people to do something for themselves. 20 years ago, we received information about for overhaul. It was done at the central level. People just paid to the communals, to the municipal service bureaus, to ZECs, and they had to just to pay money and not to think. Actually, the power taught people to stay passive and not think what was going in the house. Actually, the flats are now private property, and for many people, that private property is actually the only private property which this family has. This is their real estate and the only material means. What can they have more than this private property? Just like the dacha, small cottage, and a car, probably. So actually, this is the biggest piece of property about which they can make decisions. They have the duty to maintain it, and actually, this is the direct outcome from Ukrainian constitution. The property brings responsibility with itself. We had many meetings with the condominium leaders and with the members of condominium, and our general impression was that people are not morally ready to take care about themselves. I believe that this, at this very stage, it should become the state program, not in terms of financial donations, but in terms of propaganda on behalf of the state that the state cannot be responsible for energy efficiency of the residential houses. And this is the duty of people to think about energy efficiency in their houses. Also, we have provision about general overhaul of the building, which should be done by the municipal authorities before it transfers the building to the property of condominium. And this creates a possibility for people still to say that the state owes them this capital overhaul. And we should resolve this problem. Maybe this is anti-social measure, but nevertheless, only this unpopular measure may change the situation. Gzegozh and Olena emphasized very right problem that people simply do not understand that they are responsible for the entire piece of property. There is many global financial experts say that energy efficiency, it's something good in general, but we should explain people that if you won't warm up your houses, you will feel uncomfortable. And also we should state that if you will continue to warm up your houses just like you do it now, your house will be ruined in some years. And there is a problem which is not raised today. And this is unfortunately nobody from among international financial companies pays no attention at this threat of illegal warming up of the houses. Do you want to make a comment? I have a more specific question about what Olena mentioned. We should inform people for them to be sure that the winter might be cold and that they should think about their own comfort. Well, what you mentioned about Lutsk, there is a building, there is a specific number of flats, they borrowed money, how much time it will take, how they will repay this credit, and etc. Could you provide any details? I have several examples, and I can provide you with interesting example. Kramatorsk city, 80 flats, condominium. The credit was given 80,000 hryvnia for 5 years at the interest rate of 17%. And the average payment per flat amounts up to from 2.5 thousand hryvnia, and it will continue to drop within 5 years, even in the hardest times. In Kramatorsk, this condominium managed to pay their interest rates and pay their contribution. This is a good experience, and actually this portfolio proved to be rather good in all the countries. We may disburse credit in smaller amount, in bigger amounts, but condominium, which requires a credit, it requires them in minimal amount. Actually, 100,000 hryvnia is an average amount, which is quite usually requested by a condominium. Dear colleagues, do you have questions? Natalia Chaika, Ukrainian radio. We discussed energy efficiency in the houses which were built 50, 40 years ago. What is the situation with energy efficiency in the newly constructed houses, and whether newly built houses will comply with the internationally recognized energy methods for energy efficiency? The existing state construction standards comply with the corresponding directives of the EU on energy efficiency. That is, the new construction should be carried out in compliance with the energy efficiency requirements of the European Union and our state standards. That is, those houses should be at the proper level of energy efficiency. I would add about Polish experience. That is what Sergiy mentioned. Ukraine has approved the energy efficiency standards similar to the European standards, which are applied to the newly built houses. That's why we may expect that newly built houses should comply with these standards. But the standards are one thing, while compliance with the standards within the country is actually quite different thing. Because sometimes what we have in practice do not fully comply with the standards, and the quality of newly constructed buildings should be improved. But what is important is that people should understand that energy efficiency in newly built house is the pledge of comfort for in this house for next 40 years, and that it is better to pay for energy efficient house and pay less during next 40 years than to think how to save energy within the same 40 years.
There are several things. Expectations, first thing. Expectation that new buildings are that is like a spaceship, it doesn't lose anything, it should not be isolated. No, it's not. Even Germans say, and they are working on that for 20 years, and they need 20 years more to make their houses energy efficient. The second, that's one thing is on paper. The other one is in real life. On paper, every new buildings during the last 10 years, they are more energy efficient, and they use different standards as to heat penetration of walls, windows, etc. So on paper, they are more efficient. In real life, 30% of those buildings, they are more efficient than those that were built before, because there were construction companies who complied with the designs. Because now in design you cannot put something which is not energy efficient, but in real life we understand that, unfortunately, what Mr. Gzegozh told, people don't influence on the construction of buildings and construction companies, and I don't know how they will treat me after this. They're trying to do it faster, more, and cheaper. And it's they're trying to say on everything. And if you in your design you have insulation for 20 centimeters, it will be 10. If there is, if a window for two chambers, if you have two chambers, that's all. or energy efficient, it will be just 70% of cases it will just so on paper everything is fine, but in real life it's far from being ideal. Okay, if there is no question, then I would like to ask, maybe somebody would like to make a concluding remarks. Two words about results that can be expected from energy efficient projects in Ukraine. Our cooperation helped to run such programs in different countries, Hungary, Slovakia, Czech Republic, and Baltic countries. We did for years, for decades, and you can see how all of that happened. What is interesting? At the beginning of such process is quite slow. We are at the very beginning, and we looked what happened in those countries during the first years of introduction of energy efficient projects. So results were very poor. That took a year, 2, 3, when people understood to realize that they need that's realistic, it's possible, it can be done. And then the demand went up quickly. So there was a growth for 500%. The demand was growing for such a type of finances, and up to the level when the market was covered, that those finances, and like in Poland, for $500 million a year, and it stays on that level. Maybe we can expect similar processes in Ukraine. No demand for that at the beginning, and then it can grow quickly. Thank you. Not a comment, but a request to journalists who are here, who watch it online. Today, this topic, this issue is one of the most important for country in general. Deliver everything what you hear here, not just parts. Like there is a program in not very briefly, but just inform people why they should do it. It's very important from all points of view. From the point of view of life of common Ukrainians and energy security, dependence, inform, educate people, deliver all this information, tell people maximum what they can do. If people don't know, and it's well, nothing will change. If nothing changes, everything it's clear what we'll have as a result. Thank you. I would like to also mention there's a big role of local authorities in this process. So journalists, please speak to local authorities to get some information support from them, because in addition to Lviv and Vinnytsia, probably there is no interest from SBB. There is no interest in to installation from SBB. On one hand, there are promises and there are expectations. On the other hand, but results are horrible. We are under critical situation in terms of energy efficiency and tariffs. And tariff policy did not encourage our people to thoughts about energy efficiency. There are enough economic preconditions and political critical and to deal on that issue seriously. But as an example, we have something to work on. In Baltic republics, loans for energy efficiency is not. They get for 3% interest rate, and we have 17% of interest rate. So banking sector, international monetary institutions, and the state should make those loans affordable and available. Thank you, colleagues. There are no questions. I'd like to thank our panelists for informing you on this very important issue, and underline what Vadim told, and speak to people, and if they plan to live in this country, they should know what to do. And those buildings which are insulated partially doesn't mean that they will survive despite because of the nature of materials, and that's why all issues should be, all the problems should be solved together. And that's what we invite you to. Thank you very much. You know where to find us. See you. Bye bye.